You're listening to the Gambling Gauchos, part of the Stake in the Plains Content Network, and the Dave Campbell's Republic of Football podcast feed. Just a couple of casino caballeros talking Texas Tech, betting on the Big 12 and beyond. Now, here's Kyle Jacobson and Rob Bro, live from the Cardinal Sports Center studio.
Welcome into the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson alongside Tech Hoops Guy today. We are in the Cardinal Sports Center studio. Hey, shout out to Cardinal Sports Center. You can go buy some new gear there. Announcing a partnership with Sideline Provisions this week. You get some Sideline Provisions there at the Cardinals World. You can go online at mycardinalsports.com. Gear up for the Texas Rangers World Series right there at Cardinals. You can do it all. Kyle, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I don't mean to throw under the bus friend of the show now because it's his third time, Tech Hoops Guy. But Tech Hoops Guy, any chance you have a pair of headphones nearby?
Why? Can you hear something? I don't. I'm not going to have headphones. I could. There's some. I could ask for some. Like there's some in this house. They'll be like wireless. I'll have to like Bluetooth them into my laptop. Is it
All
that
right,
bad?
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I won't talk as loud.
Yeah, it was Rob's fault, not yours.
I'll just turn my volume down.
There you go.
Like I said, I don't want to throw under the bus a friend of the show. This is your third time on the podcast, right?
At least second. Maybe third. Yeah.
I remember we had the episode where you talked about the mob asking you if they should take Tyree Wilson, first defensive player drafted, and I think we also did a Gainesville regional preview with you. So I think this is
Okay.
third
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Which is good to see you didn't get in trouble with the mob when he was the second defensive player taken.
No. I mean, I didn't tell them. I wasn't able to give them any actionable info. If I recall,
Good.
Right. I think that, other than he was, had a hurt foot and was unlikely to run at the combine.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. BYU hammering Texas Tech after a bunch of turnovers. This is our late recap of the game. I don't think we need to do second week in a row. I'm not going to do the box score thing. It was what it was. What did you think of Jake Strong? Just, I guess, as a quarterback in the game plan.
Are you talking to me?
Either one.
I'll go first, I guess.
Y'all got me freaked out about my volume. So I'm over here pressing buttons, turning dials, trying to get this production.
Everybody who's ever listened to this podcast knows my thoughts on running the ball. And at halftime, I walked my wife to the car because we took our daughter to the game and they had to leave at halftime. And I checked the box score, fully expecting to see that Tosh had like 9 carries or something. I was like, but he had like 16 carries at halftime or 18 carries. And so I was like, honestly, we're probably running it about as much as we can. And that first drive, we're right on the doorstep. Like if you get one more yard in that drive, you're probably thinking, okay, we're doing about as good as we can. Probably changes the entire game. So I think you actually, people might not want to hear this if they're still pissed off at Kitley and everything. I think you kind of tried to run it about as much as you reasonably could. Maybe we can nitpick individual play calls. But yeah, once you get down by 14 or 17, you kind of have to throw it. So that was kind of my thoughts. And, I still feel for Jake Strong. Like he's a guy who probably came in. The coaching staff's probably thinking he's not playing until year 3 at the earliest. And so you can blame him because the 3 interceptions were brutal. But it's kind of unfair in the sense that like you put a kid who's not ready to take the training wheels off and he falls over on his bike. Like, okay, yeah, he crashed the bike, but like also it's not really his fault. So I thought he showed some good stuff. Like he was really patient in the pocket when Xavier White came open on that busted coverage. He was sitting back there for 3, 4, 5 seconds, I think, if I remember it correctly. And a young player can certainly panic in a situation like that, sort of take himself out of a clean pocket and into some pressure. So it wasn't all bad, but yeah, that's a tough spot for a guy to make his first career start as a true freshman. That stadium environment is legit. That's like about as legit as it gets in the Big 12. as somebody who's watched the game in Austin and in Norman, like they don't have that many people. But among remaining schools and stadiums, BYU has a legit atmosphere, and like I think that was a factor too. I mean, him trying to check plays or protections at the line. I don't know if they ever actually miscommunicated anything, but I think that was overall a tough spot. But to your original question, I think we tried pretty earnestly to run the ball as much as possible, especially in the first half before the score kind of got out of hand, and still just wasn't quite good enough.
I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said, especially just putting Strong's performance in context. I guess it's hard to you can compare him to other freshman quarterback who have played, but most of the freshmen that you've seen play in your life watching college football, like won a job or something. That most of the time when you watch a freshman play, it's not because they're just like the third guy on the roster and everyone else is hurt. So you can't like Kansas State. Everyone's like, well, Kansas State, they're running, they look good. Yeah, well, they were electing to play that guy. Like, you know what I mean? There's just a big difference. And so, yeah, it's that's what happens sometimes. Like it's a bit if you don't have more than two quarterbacks and they both get hurt, and you have a guy that's a true freshman, and you just, it's like you said, he's not expected to play for multiple years for a reason. And it's I think it can be difficult to recruit a big time quarterback in consecutive classes, just because they look at each other, they like look up and down. Like Will Hammond will probably scare off someone for the next class. Some big name quarterback who you otherwise might be interested in you if they're kind of looking at your situation. And I'm not saying like that, but I think like Kansas State recruited Jake Strong and ultimately elected not to offer him. And it's like they were kind of getting slow played by that guy that they had at that time. And so they were like, even though they were getting slow played by him, they still were like passed on Jake Strong. And, it doesn't mean he sucks. It doesn't mean he's not going to be good. It's just he was not, bad situation to have a guy. It's not his fault. I guess I felt bad for him, really, honestly. And and like you were saying again, just his he seems confident. Like I kind of respect him just like going out there and just like, all right, and still throwing it. Like he's not, I think early in Donovan's career, his like panic, he would just like run, just like kind of run sideways and like not even throw the ball away. He would just run out of bounds for like a 3-yard loss. And Strong's version of that is to just throw it up to the other team. And I almost kind of respect Strong's like the way he's dealing with stress more than like Donovan just like running out of bounds, But obviously the results are bad throwing it to the other team. Because it's about a turnover every like 8 plays, right? So
I think it's 6 interceptions in 6 quarters, right?
And then the fumbles are, he's pretty involved in those fumbles too, right?
True. Yeah. 100%.
Terrible snaps. I mean, and that's the other thing. So a lot of our offense, you're required to like and very quickly decide whether to hand the ball off or throw it. It's not, you don't have like a bunch of progressions. It's just like hand it off, throw it there. And like when he's like fielding a ground ball and he's never done it, and he's fielding a ground ball and getting up and it's like a terrible snap. I mean, yeah, we're putting him in a horrible situation too. And environment, like that, good quarterbacks could play bad there too, right? In my opinion, I think it's possible for a good quarterback to go lay an egg in that kind of situation. Yeah. Bad all the way around.
Yeah. Speaking of the environment, Kyle, do you want to say anything else about the ice cream or environment you had?
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit. First off, just wanted to express my gratitude and really our gratitude for being invited. Rob was supposed to be there with me. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but last second it didn't work out. So it looked like it was just me, but we were both obviously invited, and they were fans of the podcast and everything. They have their own little version of College Game Day with like signs, a dude dressed up as a chicken, a little turf field that they do segments on, like the whole deal. So really sophisticated, like I thought just big league. Like I think some of the incoming schools are thought of as like these ragtag group of 5 leftovers. BYU is they're like Power 5 top to bottom, like resources, facilities. Their stadium is a little bit like bleacher heavy, but it's like 65,000. It's completely sold out. They're loud. Like, it's legit.
Well, it looks like that. I mean, everything you're saying, it looks like that from someone who's never been there. But why? It's so weird that them being a private school, you compare them to our private schools, they just couldn't be more opposite. They're more Oklahoma State and Tech than like we actually are. Like we think of our fans as like a certain thing, and like BYU is that thing. Like those guys show up. I mean, they're into it. They're almost like Aggie-like, in a good way. Like all the good, the few good qualities that Aggies have, they like in terms of just being like, supportive and really all in. BYU certainly has it.
100%. I said that to myself multiple times. I was like, these guys, like they're further along as a program. They're more advanced as a program than some schools that have been in the Big 12 for a decade plus. Like they should have been invited so long ago, probably when the initial Big 12 started. Like they should have just added BYU back in the 90s. But yeah, the fans are like almost annoyingly nice. Like I would rather them talk trash to me than just continue to thank me for coming and saying, welcome to Provo, welcome to BYU. They're like handing me ice cream after the first quarter. And like, I know the game is over. I'm able to tell at that point that like, we're not going to be able to move the ball. But yeah, just like, so BYU Sports Nation, the outlet that invited us, super thankful to them. And they're a really good addition to the Big 12, and like their basketball arena seats 19,000. I think if they get a winning team, their basketball is going to be just as good of an environment as their football. Trying to think if there's anything else I missed. The mountains are incredible. It's a destination. Like I know some people might not want to travel to certain Big 12 cities or whatever, but if you get a chance to go to Provo, you should definitely do it. I intend to make the trip again next time we're out there for sure.
What flavor was the ice cream?
Glad you asked. It was called Graham Canyon. So it was like some graham cracker chocolate chip deal. I say without exaggeration, it was the best ice cream I've ever had, bar none. Like Bluebell, homemade, anywhere else. I was like almost greedy enough to go ask somebody for seconds, and they probably would have given it to me because they're so nice. But I was amazed by it. It was really, really good.
That's awesome. All right.
I was thinking like a scoop of vanilla in a plastic cup, like, oh, they give everybody ice cream, big whoop, but they like passed it out. I was like, Graham Canyon, like, what's this? And it was delicious. It was amazing.
Thinking about converting?
Well, so I had that thought too. I was like, I have like a Big 12 hierarchy. There's Texas Tech, and then there's like tier 2. There's Big 12 teams that I pretty actively root for if Tech isn't playing them, or if there's no like conflict of interest. And that's Kansas State, Iowa State, and West Virginia. BYU is solidly in that tier. And then like tier 3, I'm kind of neutral. And then tier 4, there's like teams I actively don't want to succeed because I think their success hurts Tech. That's like Baylor, TCU. But BYU like shot to the top of the list for me.
Awesome. All right, back to the game. Taj Brooks, another good one. We don't need to go through the drive chart, but pretty much all the success you had was on the back of Taj Brooks. I think Cameron Valdez had one long run, but pretty much anything you did. And again, going back to the snaps, Coach Maguire said there was going to be some changes. I wonder if Dennis Wilburn is the center when you come back from the bye. The center from last year moves back over from guard, and then you put Rusty Stats at guard. I don't know what you do. Maybe he doesn't play anymore this year. But that was a brutal watch. And then the mesh, not the air raid mesh, but the mesh in between the running back and the quarterback was also a huge problem. It was just elementary stuff that was so frustrating. And this is a team that had so much hype in the offseason, right? Self-preserved, self-promoted. But to just be poor fundamentally, penalties and otherwise, at this point in the season has been really, really frustrating.
Yeah, and I ranted about that for a minute on Gauchos After Dark, but I just don't understand. And like I only played in high school, but in high school we started a 2-hour practice with a few, like it's practice is broken into 5-minute sessions. It's like first 5 minutes is like warm-ups. You're just like throwing the ball 5 or 10 yards. The next 5 minutes we were like kind of a spread option. So it was like pitching the ball. And then the next 5 minutes is mesh. It's like practicing taking snaps, handing the ball off to the running back on trap, counter, zone read, like different kinds of, because you do different things with your feet. You hand the ball off quicker, more slowly, depending on the type of run play. It's like you do all of that, and you have to be good at that before you can go like run a play 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. And so that's what I don't understand. Is like, how can we be so bad literally at the snap of the ball? Like, before we talk about if the receiver can create separation on a route 12 yards down the field or something, or is the offensive line blocking well enough? Like Tech Hoops guy is saying, our true freshman quarterback is making his first career start, and he's not able to look up at the defense to even see if he should run or pass because he's staring at the ground, picking the ball up. And then there's miscommunication on, like, is Taj taking the ball? Am I pulling it to throw it? Like, you're just doomed for failure from the jump when the snap and the mesh is that bad. And so I don't see how you can carry on with a 2-hour practice if you don't have the first 15 minutes down. And we clearly don't. Like, it's game 8, and this has reared its head since game 1. And so I don't know if it's making a change at center. You've got Dennis Wilburn. You could put Jacoby Jackson or maybe just move Stats over to guard. But, yeah, you've got to, like, maybe simplify some stuff with as long as Morton is out, at least, and tell Jake Strong, okay, we're going to do a little bit less RPO, or, I don't know. But it's pretty maddening that you can't do something that literal 7th graders are expected to master in the first 15 minutes of practice, and then you got on the field at the Power 5 level and can't do it in a game. It's like, it begs a question on some personnel decisions, some coaching decisions, like, who isn't doing their job well enough? Because this is clearly not good enough.
Yeah, I felt like the first fumble in the BYU red zone, Jake Strong was handing the ball off on 4th down and was trying to pull it. But then later in the game, he just missed a handoff. So I don't know what was going on. It looked like he was pulling the ball on the first 4th down. So it was a frustrating game overall. And it just, does it seem like Texas Tech is well coached is my question offensively?
Offensively, no.
Are you talking about the last 6 quarters, or are you talking as a whole? Because I think the how compromised we were at quarterback it's just difficult to even look at the last 6 quarters, in my opinion. I think there's a reasonable take that you can't gain much from that. Like these 6 quarters aren't predictive of anything.
I 100% agree. Like, you definitely have to grade on a curve, but take out the last 6 quarters. Or were there still a bunch of snaps on the ground?
Yeah. No, I think you've got right. I think it's still a fair comment or question to have, but with the you have a fewer it's just a really small sample size of games early on, and things are certainly not going well as a whole. If you want to like look at the past, though, then you have to why not include the last 4 games of last year? It's an arbitrary kind of set to use. I get it that it's this year. It's like it's the year that's before us. Well, I understand that.
So I have what I think is a fair counterpoint to that. Why you can't use the last 4 games of last year, like, just for one position group, you had a different wide receivers coach, and like, take out the last 6 quarters and look at the first 4.5 or 5.5 games, whatever it was. Did Jaron Bradley progress since last season, or did he regress?
Tough to say, in my opinion, because I hate to keep throwing it in, because I also in my I have not mentioned that we played Morton with a pretty severe shoulder injury for 2 weeks too, prior to us having this current situation. So with that, even with all of these things in mind, I agree with you that Bradley looks worse this year than last year. I think he looks like, to my eye, I'm watching the game. I don't know what plays being run or anything, but it seems like to me he's playing worse. And that's with me also putting a massive curve on it because of the quarterback situation. I still believe that. I don't think it's not like so glaringly worse that I want to like question everything. But because like there's other questions too, right? I mean, you could really pick off a lot of areas, which is unfortunate and be like, well, that's not as good either as it was last year.
Yeah, I feel like defensively, anything you want to say could be contributed to injury, and maybe you can do that on offense too. You're playing a bunch of freshmen, you're playing a bunch of true freshmen, but 3 or 4 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, the defensive coordinator said, all right, let's simplify. We're going to run base defense because all these freshmen are in here. It just feels like that's a well-coached unit, despite the injuries and despite the freshmen. But you haven't had as much simplification, and maybe too much simplification. I don't know what it is, but you haven't had as much success offensively.
Well, and is it fair to say if within each individual game, if the offense performed as well as the defense, you'd be 6-2 at worst right now, right? Like maybe losses to Oregon and Kansas State.
Yeah.
The defense played well enough to beat West Virginia, BYU, Wyoming. Like those are all 20 points in regulation or fewer. And I could argue that the defense played well enough to beat Oregon. Like you were down by 1, you had the ball around midfield before your quarterback turned the ball over for the 4th time in that game. So like I could argue 7-1. I think the offense and defense played
played well though too. Yeah, I think.
Well, I mean, except for the 4 turnovers.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was kind of the deal with BYU. Like in the 4th quarter, I looked up and I was like, we have 120 more yards than them. We're beating time of possession. We have way more first downs. But, we have 5 turnovers. And, like, that's the entire game right there. I mean, that's like the rest of it is almost not even worth analyzing. When you lose a turnover battle 5-0, doesn't matter.
Give 5 University.
Yeah. I do feel a little bit vindicated. I think my score prediction was 20-17 BYU. If you take away the defensive touchdown, it was 20-14, including a possession that we had stall out in the red zone. So I feel like I was in the right spirit of that prediction.
When's the last time you made a field goal? Did you make one in Morgantown?
I don't remember.
Houston? One in Houston? Houston?
That's a good question.
I don't remember a field goal lately.
I think we hit one versus Baylor.
Maybe so. I could look at the scores and figure it out.
Rob, you want to know what's never overhyped?
I could guess.
That would be our friends over at Rahino Barbecue. You can check them out on social at Rahino BBQ. Visit them online, RahinoBBQ.com. Order ahead to make sure that your brisket, ribs, turkey, pulled pork is all there when you arrive. You've got the OG location out in Olton and the food truck going all across West Texas. Appreciate Rahino Barbecue support of the Gambling Gauchos. Now I'm going to open a potential can of worms. Tech Hoops guy, you tweeted something to the effect of, I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, so you can clarify, but basically that Joey Maguire's preseason comments about this team shouldn't make fans any more or less upset at the 3-5 start, that they should basically feel the same about the 3-5 start in a vacuum as they would with the preseason comments. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Yeah, I think we should not hold it against him for him seeing the team at its peak. His envision when he would talk about the team, he would speak about the team as if it was operating at like 100% capacity, playing at its very best, fully healthy. And he kind of was like clearly talking about them in hyperbole to me. Clearly, we should not, like, the way we feel about 3-5, which is not good. Like, you should be mad about it. Like, you should be mad about it just as if Cliff Kingsbury was the coach, and when he would just kind of mumble and be like, well, I hope we'll be okay. I think we got our guys. We're probably – and then, like, they'd be like, well, your preseason rank. Because we were preseason ranked. So you're going to get a question, like, in the offseason. Like, what do you think? Well, things go well, Yeah, like, we should be – the way we should feel about the season should not be affected at all by whether you have Cliff saying that or Leach talking about Pirates or Joey, because Joey's personality is – if you've met him, like, if you're mad about it, like, get ready because he's going to do it again. Like, he's positive and optimistic. Like, that is how he talks. So,
yeah, I think
there's no one, just as an example, he said we would be, 2 touchdowns better than last year. There is literally no team in the country that would be 2 touchdowns better this year. There's no one that would be -14 against last year's Tech team at a neutral site. So there's literally no one. Like, that's clearly hyperbole to me.
Okay, so even if you don't take it,
that's my kind of overall thoughts on that.
Sure, but even if you don't take it literally, that this team would literally be 14 points better than an 8-5 squad that ended on a 4-game win streak last year. like, I think it's okay to interpret that as we're significantly better, we're marginally better, like we're noticeably better than last year. And like, I hate to break this to everybody, but at 3-5 with a loss to a group of 5 team, you're not better than last year, and it's not particularly close. He made other comments. He said we have the best quarterback room in the country. Again, if you don't interpret that literally, like, okay, well, he's not saying that we're actually better than Caleb Williams and Drake May and these guys, but he feels really good about the quarterback room. And then, like, the starter, the handpicked starter from that quarterback room kind of leaves a lot to be desired out of the gates. Or he says, yeah, we had the 7th overall draft pick at outside linebacker last year, but I think that room is actually even better this year. Again, like, giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying, okay, maybe he didn't mean that, like, literally Steve Linton is better than Tyree Wilson, but as a unit, they could play better, they could match the production, whatever. It also hasn't panned out. And so I responded to you and said, like, one of two things happened. Either he intentionally oversold this, like he knew that we weren't as good without Tyree Wilson, that our quarterback room wasn't as good as he was saying, that the team wasn't 14 points better than last year's team. And he, I don't want to say lied about it, but he, like, intentionally overhyped it. Or two, he saw the team in front of him and completely misevaluated it. And, like, misevaluating players and teams is a big problem. Obviously, like, that goes to recruiting, goes to scouting, game planning. If you're not properly evaluating what's in front of you, that's a problem for a coaching staff. Like, I view it has to be one of those two things, or maybe a combination of the two. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's that relevant to his, like, ability to like evaluate or scout. Only because you're not dealing with a rational person. That when you're talking about Joey Maguire talking about his football team in the offseason coming into a season. So from like his perspective, the way he's thinking about this is, I like my squad, right? I'm trying to snowball this thing. I just won my last 4 games. I'm returning a lot of guys from the same team. You know, we won some close games last year. Like, if we are just as good as last year, we could literally win like 4 or 5 games, even if we're just as good. Like, that's just the nature of variance in playing a football schedule and being in like a Power 5 conference with our talent versus what everyone else has. There's not a big difference, right? There's a lot of teams that are very, very similarly built. So with that, so he's got that. He knows that he's not dumb. He's also literally insane. I mean, we're talking about a guy. He's that kind of positive and optimistic, and he's going to speak things into. He's going to see people for like their best. He on the quarterback room. What made me think about it? Him saying we have the best quarterback room in the country. From his perspective, he literally, like, our backup quarterback is getting paid more in NIL than probably most schools in the entire country. Baron Morton. Okay, like, the reason why is because, like, we literally think we have the best quarterback room in the country. We're paying our backup quarterback X amount. That's more than most starting quarterbacks make. So, like, of course he's going to say that and think that. I mean, he truly believed that. Does that mean he's like, were we wrong on that? Do you think we should have not paid him and him potentially have gone to like Oklahoma State or something?
I wouldn't say it that explicitly, but I think it's fair to ask if, I mean, like, this is sort of a tough conversation to have because, like, 3 years ago, these guys were amateur student athletes and, like, you talked about them a certain way. Now they're basically professionals on 1-year unrestricted free agent contracts. But I do think it's fair to ask, how much did we pay Tyler Shuck? How much did we pay Jerome Bradley? And did we get a good ROI on that? And, like, I don't know the exact dollar figures.
Thus far, no. Thus far, probably not.
So, I mean, like, do you think we have a better quarterback room fully healthy than, like, what USC or North Carolina or LSU or Florida State has?
No, but I'm not going to split. Like, I didn't believe him when he said that. You know what I mean? Like,
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's totally hyperbole. Like, him telling me some of the stuff he's saying, like, I just flat didn't believe it.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to break it down. So, like, he says things that we're basically, like, not supposed to believe him. We're supposed to, okay, he's just saying that, but it's not true. Is that kind of?
Yeah, to me, I think. When he gave an explanation to a couple weeks ago, like, that was like, I thought he was being totally honest and forthright about the situation. When he kind of was like, I could be like the normal coach, but to me, there is a lot of, he's not like Leach, but like, he has a weird personality quirk like Leach. One of them for Joey is he's not going to be the coach that mumbles up there and says, "Man, I just hope we got a shot. I just hope our boys show up." Like, he's seriously going to, like. He's that positive. He's going to look at Linton and his measurables and be like, that's a first rounder. That's a first rounder. There's plenty. There's a first rounder I live in Dallas. There's a Walmart near me that has a first rounder working at it. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't mean he's going to play in the first first rounder. Yeah, I guess but in his mind, that's just how he talks about his team. He was trying to snowball, I guess, and in his mind, going back to the offseason, he probably thought, we're going to win enough games to where I'll get my ass will be covered on this, right? Like I'm not going to, if by being as positive as I am, I think we'll at least win, enough games to where it won't be like a total just fall flat on your face type situation. And the risk of that happening, like him falling flat and him having to be like, man, yeah, sorry guys about that whole thing. Like to me, in his mind, probably was worth taking for the chance that, we beat Wyoming, we go into Oregon, everybody is going crazy. We win a close game, which we almost did, and you just Shuck stays healthy and he is what he thinks he can be, which is this 26-year-old quarterback, that has all in his mind, he's that gamble was probably worth it. I mean, I guess he's like, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, well, I hope everything works out. If we get a couple breaks,
sure,
we'll win a game or two. I think just that was in his mind, what was going through his head. And I don't blame him for that. Like to me, it's almost like irrelevant too. Cause we are what we are, I'm not going to get more mad about this than just because of the off season that we had. And we have Joey Maguire as coach. Yeah. Like that. If you don't want him to be optimistic in the off season, we have the wrong coach. Just your coach talking about Buffalo, don't hire Mike Leach.
Sure. And I get that. Like Joey is who he is. You hired him to be that. And so you don't want to change his personality or his coaching style. But I have two, what I think are fair follow-ups. Like, can you ask him to rein it in a little bit? And instead of saying,
I think he will. I think the answer, I think your question is a resounding yes. And I think you'll see that over the next 12 months.
Because the next grad transfer edge rusher we bring in from Syracuse, he could be like, hey, all the potential in the world, all the tools, but he's got to really hone his craft if he wants to be a guy like Tyree Wilson. Yeah. Instead of going all the way to hey, we're even better at that position than we were last year. Or the other side of this is I hear what you're saying, but then I also hear what the median fan right in the middle of the bell curve of Texas Tech fans, how they respond to these comments. And they're just straight up not going to believe him next time he says something like this. The next time we hear a comment from Kitley or Maguire that Baron Morton's arm talent is comparable to Patrick Mahomes, all they're going to point back to is oh yeah, and the 2023 team was going to beat the 22 team by 14 points. So it's fine if he wants to go all in on that strategy, but if you don't back it up, people aren't going to listen the next time or take you as seriously the next time. At least not until you prove it 5 times in a row. It's kind of my mom told me this one time when I lied to her. She was like, you have to tell me the truth now 1,000 times in a row for me to forgive you for that one lie. And that's how it works.
No, we actually are not off at all on how we view this, because everything you just said, I agree with 100%. That is why I tweeted what I tweeted. So let's see if I can articulate this. You're absolutely correct. Like I said, it goes back to the gamble that Maguire made. It didn't work, right? So we're facing the bad repercussions, which is what you said. People are going to be snarky and critical of anything they say going forward because of how much we bet on himself. He thought he'd win enough games to where this would not be an issue, right? You win at least 7, no one's going to be as snarky as we are now, 3 and 5. Okay, so it didn't work. The risk, the reward, which would have been, like I said, snowballing this thing and kind of winning more games than we should have this year. Having the thoughts, he got us in the top 25. I mean, in a way, if you start out, if we're 7-1 right now or 6-0, we're in the playoffs because of, I mean, I think it was a smart thing for him to do. And that's why, because it was smart, just because it didn't work, right? We have to not hold it against him. Like I said, in my tweet, I go, Tech fans, we need to not hold this against him because I think it was a smart move. It didn't work. It did not work, right? Failed. We fell flat on our face. Probably is more miserable than he could have, he in his wildest dreams, this probably wouldn't happen, right? When he was making these comments. So it didn't work, but at the same time, it's happened. I think it was a good process. I think it was worth trying to snowball it at that point. It didn't work, but it's for everyone's best interest. We need to just not, move on, because just that was the impetus of my tweet, to be honest, because I felt the way you did, I'm not going to hold it against him. Because I think like I said, I think it was in his mind, he wasn't expecting this, but it's just who he is too. So if that makes sense.
I think it does. I think you're also probably in a very small minority of Tech fans that, even with the benefit of hindsight here in almost November, thinking that was the right strategy. And I'm not necessarily saying that I disagree with you, because like I hear your reasoning, but I think most people right after the loss to Wyoming were like, we shouldn't have been running our mouths.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But and like on the Linton deal, I mean, if Linton works, I mean, it's actually unbelievable what he was able to do in terms of taking this guy who played like 200 snaps. I mean, if you'd have listened to me before the season, I would have been like, taking a guy that had not done anything, and like all these draft guys are like, yeah, watch out. I mean, all Linton had to do is just play well, and he probably would have got drafted. I mean, and you can kind of sell that to me. I think the salesman is like, if Joey can do this, he can do it again, possibly. Maybe there's a counterpoint of like, actually, no, you cry wolf or something. Now you're less credible. But I think he actually could sell it as like, look what I mean. He's got the ability to kind of get guys to really sell. He sold us hard. We're so mad about it. We fell for it that hard. But I think it's actually a positive if you can harness it. And part of like doing that is we just got to not hold it against him that he is who he is to some, because like I said, I mean, I know how these, like, nobody in the country would be minus 14 versus the team that kicked off against Ole Miss, or no one. I mean, like Michigan or Ohio State would probably be right around like that amount. You might get like Georgia to like minus 17, 14. I mean, nobody's that. So of course I didn't believe him when he said Tech would be that. We're not the best team in the country. That's just who he is. But to me, I don't think it's I also don't think it's unreasonable for people to be mad about it. Like, you know what I mean? Because of how much we really beat our chest this offseason. We really, really did. It made me uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable, the amount that we talked.
And I can't sit here and lie and say like, oh, I saw that we were going to underwhelm. But I think I did in our preseason preview say like, hey, for all this hype and as good as we all feel, the win total is still 7.5. Like Vegas still thinks 6 or 7 wins is just as likely as what we're all talking about, 8 or 9. Vegas by that line thinks 5 wins is as likely as a Big 12 championship appearance, which is like what we were all had our sights set on as fans. And so probably should have listened to that a little bit, that voice in my head a little bit more. And at least thought like, okay, maybe 7 or 8 is the right number instead of 9 or 10 if you beat Oregon.
It's not as fun.
Sure. Yeah. But like now you're looking down the barrel of like, I don't see a path to bowl eligibility, which like, had you asked me that in August, I would have been like, oh yeah, we'll be, bowl eligible by Halloween or whatever,
I mean, do you not, is it unreasonable for Maguire to treat football as if it's like a combat sport, and in combat sports, when you listen to, you'll see a guy, like this past weekend, they fought in Abu Dhabi. So it was all the Dagestan guys were like minus 600 favorites over all these guys. Well, if you go ask the guy who's like a 7-1 underdog, if you go when they did to the media, they're like, I'm going to kick this guy's ass. I'm going to destroy this guy. I mean, that's how they talk. You wouldn't hear them be like, I just hope I don't want to keep everybody's expectations reasonable. I'm just trying to make it through maybe the first couple minutes. I think like Maguire truly believes that he needs to, he's going to be irrationally positive when he's talking to the media. And we just need to accept that for what it is. That he thinks that is a good move for us. And I don't think that's unreasonable. Like, I think he is well within his like right to have all the information, in terms of motivating young guys and playing a sport like football. It's not like a precision sport like golf, like some of these other sports where you do need to be like level, like baseball and some of these others where it makes no sense to like beat your chest and run out, like smash your head through a wall or something. But football is a little different. I don't know. It's an interesting kind of discussion. It didn't work, right? It clearly backfired on him horribly. But I think if you really take a step back and try to look at it with the information he had at the time and what he was trying to gain from it. And we are experienced. Okay. The other side of it is like the absolute worst happened. I guess we could be 0-8, right? But it's pretty much worst case scenario in the context of acting like you're going to win the Big 12 championship. Now you're 3-5. And it's like, is it that bad? I mean, a year from now, are we really, sure, there'll be some people commenting on Twitter, but like, who cares, right? I mean, like the worst thing happened and it's really not that bad. Just suck it up. we'll be kicking the ball off in 12 months, and no one's really going to be thinking about this too.
If you win.
Not everybody like Twitter is important, but like it's not like everything, right? It's like just because like the first comment from the same guy who now for the rest of his life, every time Joey's comment is going to be like, "Oh, you said 2 touchdowns." Well, I mean, like, yeah, that guy will exist now. He has been created and he's been sent off now, like in his little raft down the stream, and he's like a little bewildered now, and he's like every day now he's got a comment about this, like that for sure happened, right?
I think he's sitting right next to, I don't care what uniforms we wear, just win guy on social media. Like, I think those two are a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Love it. You also have a bunch of used car salesman comments now that Joey Maguire is just a used car salesman, or he's Spike Dykes in the new millennium, which I don't think is too much of a negative, but I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
To continue the combat sports analogy, if you lose a couple fights, you don't get booked anymore. So I think Maguire needs to be a little careful moving forward to not lose a bunch of fights. But if this is one fight, if it's a 10-round, 12-round fight, you're down 3-5 heading into the so you have some time to punch back, but it is rough, and it's 3-5, and you're heading into the bye week with some changes to make. Hopefully your quarterback, Baron Morton, is healthy. I would assume, based on the timetable they gave you earlier, Tyler Shuck is also not in play to play, but you're going to start hearing Tyler Shuck's name about coming back. I'm telling you, based on the timeline they gave before the season started, unless he's had some pushbacks, but it would be really funny. A couple of comments here. I think Maguire's personality is that he actually believed it himself. I don't think he was trying to sell anything. I think he was trying to get people excited about what he was excited about. If that's the truth, then he misevaluated the team. That was Kyle's original point there. I think there's some happy medium there that he's using hyperbole, but I don't know. I would like to see a couple of recruiting classes on the field and then a couple of winning seasons before I start talking about Maguire as a misrecruiter, but this has certainly not helped his case.
So I'll make an analogy from my limited playing experience. Like, I played high school football, and I was at the school that we were the IB magnet school. So we were like the Lubbock High of the Austin area. We had a bunch of smart kids. We did not have many athletes. And like our football program's history very much reflected that. We'd been to the playoffs like 3 times ever in 30 years as a school or whatever. And like at the beginning of the offseason, our coach asked us, he was like, "Who's the best football team in our district?" Which is like 7 or 8 teams. And like everybody in the gym pretty much unanimously was like Stony Point, because Stony Point had been to like state semifinals 2 years in a row, and like one district every year. And it was like, how can you all possibly say that? Like, you need to believe that we're the best team on the field in the district. Like, how can you win if you don't believe that? So like, I kind of get what Tech Hoops guy is saying, but like, we lost a close game to Stony Point. Like, objectively, they were a better team than us. But I get from like a mindset standpoint that like, you can't tell a team like, hey, we're probably 7-5-ish. Let's see if we can get a winning record in Big 12. But like, you have to kind of convince yourself, if you're a boxer or a football player, that like you're way better than you are, and that like you're a bad mother effer and the other team is doomed because they have to play you.
Yeah. Even
if like betting markets and analytics and all that like know that it's not true, but like you line up 10 times, you might be able to beat them once. So I get that, but I also totally understand when that message leaks from outside the locker room, from outside the field house. And Joey's even talked about that, like the everything runs through Lubbock comment. He even said at Big 12 Media Days, he was like, yeah, I told Patrick, our head content guy, like that's one of those comments that probably should have stayed private. And so it's like, why did he necessarily need to take all this before the media? Why couldn't he have just told his team, hey, we've got this position group, that position group, we're better than last year's team, this is our ceiling? It didn't necessarily all have to be public, because like my high school coach never told the newspaper, yeah, we're better than Stony Point this year, we're going to win state this year. he just asked us to believe that when we showed up to work out, like, you need to practice and work out in a way that you believe we can beat anybody. So I think that's also kind of an important distinction to make, is private versus public conversations.
Yeah. I always enjoyed the tech media days where you go and ask the players, what do you think your goal is this year? And they're like, oh man, 6-6. I just hope you make a bowl game. And it's like, okay. And then you go Maguire's first year, go to the tech media days, and they're like, oh, we're gonna win every game. Like, I remember Reggie Pearson, like the goal is to win every game. And then he went to
and I think to create that kind of fervent belief, I think you can't just say it to him like one time in the gym, about Stony Point. It's, I think Maguire just like lives it. Because I've been with him in like intimate settings, and he is that exact. He not like just, where he would kind of speak his mind, like not in front of the media, talking about the team. And he said the same stuff. And like, even then I'm like, all right, man, I'm kind of looking at him like, it's almost like my, back in college, like the guy that's like, everybody's got like a buddy who's like loud and talking, and he's like, alcohol on his breath, and he's saying some shit. You don't believe everything he says. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of just like, all right, buddy. You know what I mean? Like that was the vibe. That's like what I get when I listen to what he said. And that was like through the media as well. Nobody thought, I didn't think Linton was a first round pick. I didn't think we would be better rushing the passer without Tyree Wilson. Not in a million years, but I did think we would be so much better than we have been. And we've lost games that we should have won. And now it's like, to compound everything, then you throw in the wrench of like, okay, then Morton gets hurt. We're on our third string quarterback. And it turns out we have like a well below average 18-year-old true freshman quarterback that's playing for 6 quarters. He's not like your stock true freshman. It's below that. And you only see the good ones, right? But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like not all true freshmen are created equal. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head guys that played as true freshmen. Patrick Mahomes, obviously not a fair comparison. And even he had like some screw ups. He was just playing street ball. Like, he had no idea what he was doing, but his talent was insane. Alan Bowman, who I think held his own. He was really well coached. Yeah.
He also played Lamar in Houston.
Right, he played terrible defenses,
but he didn't throw 4 picks against Ole Miss either when he was thrust into that game.
No, he's also still starting. He's still starting games. We'll see in a couple of years if Jake Strong is starting Big 12 games. It might just be that Bowman is a hit and Jake is not. He might just be a better quarterback. Like Bowman, that's actually likely at this point. But who knows? It's just so like when you see like I'm not saying anything because I look like an 17-year-old when I was 17 too. But he just does. He's got a long ways to go. He looks like a little kid, and that's like physically and just everything. He's just not. It's not fair. This was not the plan. This was not the plan. It's not good, man. It's not good. It sucks. It's very difficult. Like, I totally get that. It's almost like a cop out. It just almost blows my mind. There's fans that I know that are like true Tech fans who have followed the program for decades. Okay, have seen some shit. Right? They've seen some bad things, and they're literally saying this is the most disappointing year I've ever had. And it's like, okay, hold on. We are 8 games in, number one. You know what I mean? We're the season is not over with yet. And we fired our coach like 18 months ago when he was 5-3. The only way you fire a guy at 5-3 is if you think like your program is in a death spiral that cannot be corrected, right? And so how can you and the person who's saying that, the person who's saying this is the most disappointing I've been or disappointing year, they also were like at 5-3, like, yes, we have to fire this guy or else this program is never going to recover. So how can you like have that opinion and then like 20 months later you're like, most disappointed I've ever been that in 20 months Maguire doesn't have us. It's so just the psyche of this, being a Tech sport. Unfortunately, being a Tech sports fan, because it's hard not to say like only this could happen to us, right? Because it's like it feels like that. It feels like only this situation could befall us.
Rob, I've got 2 more questions for the group here on the BYU game. First one, mostly for Tech Hoops Guy. Second one, want to go around the horn. But we were talking pre-episode a little bit about the betting market for that game, and clearly the line did not move enough once it became apparent that Jake Strong was getting the start instead of Baron Morton. This was a question we got, I think, preseason. It was like, who is the most valuable individual player on Texas Tech's roster in terms of betting markets and like what the spread would be? And at the time I said, I think it's Tyler Shuck, just because it's always the starting quarterback, unless you have like a Reggie Bush type running back or like a, Randy Moss type receiver, then maybe that would be the case. And so obviously Shuck wasn't the starter. It was Morton in the middle of the season after Shuck's injury, but the drop off from Morton to Strong, I think we opined a little bit later in the season that like it would be close to a touchdown, because I think, and this was where I was struggling to make the comparison, but like in the NFL, I think if Tom Brady was like ruled out on a Wednesday and Brian Hoyer or Jimmy Garoppolo was behind him, that was usually like a 6-7 point swing. And so I didn't know if it was, and that's of course the best player in the world at the time, but like the drop off to his backup, the delta is probably similar from the delta between Shuck or Morton and a true freshman like Jake Strong. What should the market have reflected once it was known that Morton was out and Jake Strong was going to be taking every snap at quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would have probably bet BYU through -2.5. So that's like that. Me making that comment implies that I thought it should be BYU -3, or that at least -3 is close enough to where like making a bet is a bad decision, because when you make a bet you have to lay -110 to win 10. So you need like a bigger edge than just being spot on. But yeah, I think that was a unique, that game was a unique situation to where if you have some domain knowledge about a team, you really can. And it goes against all these little mantras that you hear about betting, like never bet on your team. Well, here's the thing, actually, in general, the betting market is so like you should only bet on your team, because that's the only time that you might know more. Like when you're just picking off something random, odds are everybody else in the world knows more about that, than you do. The people that have bet into that line know way more than you. But when in that situation, yeah, I think there are like these unicorn situations where the line can be totally wrong. And the only way that anyone would know that is if you are like that intimately familiar with the program and know that, hey, this is a guy that we elected to play a Baron Morton without practicing him. That blew my mind when Morton gets hurt. He doesn't throw a single pass all week, and is going to make his first start. I know he played against West Virginia, but make his first start of the year without throwing a pass. That is, to me, says something about the option behind him. Our willingness to kind of throw him out there, risk him getting hurt again, which happened, said something about Strong. And it's just, if you were able to kind of pinpoint that, that like everybody's like after the fact, kind of gloating, saying, "I told you BYU," every Tech fan saying to bet BYU, and it was like, yeah, that was that situation. The market can be that wrong. It really can. And the only way you're going to spot it is if you're like a fan of the program. Maybe you could, if you're following like TCU, you could probably do it for TCU and Baylor as well. If someone like y'all too, y'all have the knowledge to probably do it for more than just a couple teams. But most people would say like, don't bet on your team, but no, you actually should. Like, you should be looking at, you guys could probably win betting Tech player props. Like I would back you guys. Like if you can't bet a lot of money on those, like if you were, you know what I mean? Like eventually you would reach a point where no one would take your action on those. But if like you could infinitely bet, I would like bankroll you guys betting, Tech player props, because I think you guys are probably following it more than everyone else who's touching it. But that was an example of, so on Sunday I took Baylor or BYU under 52.5 for the game. Took BYU plus 4.5. Some groups moved it down to 3. And then it became very obvious that Strong was starting with like an hour to kick, and it went down to 2.5, and the total went down to 49 or 49.5. And that was still clearly wasn't enough to me. It should have gone more. But yeah, it sucks that that this involves Tech, right? Like I wish like there was some other like horrific quarterback injury that I'm following from some other program that I can bet on, because their quarterback situation is just so compromised. But no, it's tech. Like, it's like, wow, this is great. I get to wake up and watch this market, watch, like, I'm like sitting here watching just everyone betting BYU, and I'm like, I know why they're doing that. You know what I mean? I'm like, I clearly understand why this line is moving the way it's moving.
Second question I had is totally unrelated, but the spitting deal. Being in the stadium at the game, they like throw a flag, and the referee announces to the stadium, flagrant unsportsmanlike conduct for spitting in a player's face, number 15 is ejected. And I was like, holy cow, that's a bad look. Like, we're probably about to lose this game. And it was just like a wheels are off kind of moment in my head. I was like, why do we have guys spitting on other players? And it wasn't until like much later that night I get back to the hotel and see the clip that like the ref has his back to the incident, and it really looks like 92 for BYU like taps the ref on the shoulder and makes an accusation, and the ref kind of just like goes along with it.
Yeah.
I remember back in the bowl game against Ole Miss, after that scuffle, there's an Ole Miss player who looked back at the Tech sideline, and like the camera angle's from behind his head, but you can see like a jerk motion kind of like that. And he could have been like shouting something for like emphasis, or it could have been a spitting motion. I don't know. And it wasn't at a player. It was just like in our general direction. You don't see any of that with York. Like his head is still like, you can tell when somebody is trying to spit like far. The same player then says another player on Texas Tech's roster did it after the game. The same player for BYU is a guy that was instigating on the sideline with Miles Price after the punt return. And like, I'm not necessarily going to go far enough to like deny that something happened. Like maybe it did. I don't know is the answer. But I do know like 92 is a common denominator in 3 different scuffles or alleged scuffles. And I think it casts serious doubt on his version of events. Did I miss anything else on the broadcast that like gives information or direction one way or the other on this?
No, there was zero information on the broadcast. They had no idea it happened. It was so late after the play. And he doesn't even look like he's jawing York. Like there's no, like you can tell when somebody's talking trash.
Well, he goes up to him. Like he put his face mask in York's face mask. Like this guy, 92 from BYU, is the one starting all of this. And like, I'm not saying that our players responded appropriately. I don't know. Again, I'm not saying they did or didn't. But like, if you go start some shit, like I'm not saying you should be spit on, but like if you talk trash, the guy might talk trash back to you. If you headbutt a guy, he might headbutt you back. Like I don't know what happened in the middle of those scuffles. Like I'm sure guys call each other all kinds of names, talk about each other's mamas, all that stuff. But it does not look like in the clip that York does any kind of head motion or spits on him. And the fact that he levied the same exact accusation against another player on like a totally different sequence in the game, and that again, this same player was the guy who like I thought hit Miles Price pretty late and should have been targeting out of bounds, and then gets up and like causes another fracas. It's like, dude, you're kind of the common denominator in this whole deal. And like, I can't help but wonder if you're an instigator who then tries to play the victim. He was laughing on the sideline after the ejection, like yucking it up with his teammate, like, oh yeah, I told the ref such and such happened and got him kicked out. Like at the same time, though, I have a hard time believing, it's not impossible, but I have a hard time believing that the ref could be approached by a player and just take his word for something like that to the extent that he's willing to eject a player for something he didn't see.
It's
or that like
you got to trust him.
Couldn't be corroborated. So I don't know. At the game, I was like, what the hell are we doing? Like suspend that guy, process him after the season's over, whatever. Like you just can't spit on another person.
Yeah.
But then after I was like, if I was on a jury, and I know Tech Hoops guy, a lawyer, would appreciate it. I was like, if I was on a jury, I would have to say not guilty because like there's no evidence there.
Yeah, I'm going non-guilty too.
Yeah, and he doesn't like recoil, like anyone would if you got spit on. He doesn't move at all. The guy that, and yeah, he was just so animated and the whole time. He clearly had his. Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, you would either wipe it off, immediately slap the guy, like something. And so I know Bill Romanowski, he like hawked a big loogie on somebody, and like you could see the spit in that video. but like you can't see anything in the.
He also gouged someone's eye out, didn't he?
Probably. That sounds
Yeah, I
like Bill
think
Romanowski.
Yeah, that sounds true.
So anyway, I was pretty hot and heavy about it at the game. It's like, man, we're losing all control. We've got guys spitting on the opposing team. But then after I saw some stuff on social media, I was like, yeah, I'm not totally sure that happened. In fact, I'm about like 50-50 on it. So anyway.
Yeah, there were other friends of the program that were saying that it was completely fabricated and that Batty made it up and then was laughing about it on the sideline in the same clip.
I did see some BYU fans. They like pulled some 5-minute, college game day style segment on Tyler Batty, where I'm sure like he won community member of the year and like service award. Like, sure, he's a great guy. And they're like, you really think this guy would lie about it? And I was like, if I had enough time on my hands, I would pull all the clips of him headbutting different people, instigating. Just like, yeah, I do believe this guy would start some ish and then like play the victim or lie about it. Like, yeah, I can believe that. I can get there.
All right, moving out of the game, BYU, bury it. It's over. Burn the playbook, whatever it is. Burn the box score. What changes do you want to see in the second half of the year out of the bye week? Are there major changes? Are there player changes? Broad, whatever, 3,000-foot view changes? What are you thinking?
I definitely, if he's healthy, I want Baron Morton to take every snap at quarterback. I hope Tyler Shuck recovers. I hope he's healthy, but like he's not the future of the program at that position. I would like to see a different center, and I would like to see some young receivers get a shot. I think we have some veteran guys that have proven themselves at times, but I would say their performance this year has not been consistent enough to where their spot is just totally solidified. And so, some guys are, it doesn't really click until they get some live reps in a game and the lights are on. And so, like, let's see what we have at receiver. We have very little to lose at this point. And maybe this is scheme, maybe it's coaching, but the guys we have are not getting open consistently. Their yards per route, like receiving yards per route run is not good. And so, like, let's see what we have in some of these redshirt freshman types. And like, if they can't pass muster, then like, I don't know what you do instead, but like, let's try something different at that spot, and give Taj 30 or 35 touches a game.
Man, yeah. I want to see more us just operate, without just such a mass, right, at quarterback. That's the number one thing. I just can't imagine. I mean, it'd be like just going and playing golf with somebody that's better than you for money, and you're giving them like 3 strokes aside, and that's what it has felt like the last 6 quarters. But so yeah, that'd be nice. I just want to see us win because part of me is, with games still on the schedule, at Texas Tech, if you beat Baylor and TCU and U of H and Texas, and I guess Tarleton State, if you beat everyone that you play on your schedule from Texas, it's just hard to have, even if you only win like 5 games. So we still have like some things I can cling to, right? And Thursday night beating TCU I would be, not all the way back, but I would be absolutely feeling it. And we're gonna have a very good chance of winning the game. I mean, assuming Morton is healthy, we'll probably be favored in the game. So I mean, we'll have every opportunity to win that game. And we need a win, right? It's just sucks because when you lose the games that we've lost this year, you put yourself in this position. There's no margin for error, right? We spent an hour talking about how mad we are about what our coach said this offseason. Like, that's how bad that's just how shitty the season's been. Like, it blows my mind that we're having that discussion. But and like the only way to stop that is like beat teams that matter. We play a team that matters Thursday night. Would be a big one to win.
If you go 5-7 but beat Texas, is everything?
What would that be like if you beat? That's a good question. What would you feel? What would be going through your head if you go 5-7, you beat Texas, TCU, Baylor, U of H?
Honestly,
that's the whole game, right?
Yeah, like, would you rather beat Texas as your last game of the season or beat like USF in the Birmingham Bowl in on December 18th. You know,
Yeah.
like
Go to the
I know
All-
what I'm probably picking, especially if you beat Texas. There's a good chance you're keeping them out of the Big 12 title game, and like that
And
to me,
like Rob said, I think you'd probably go to a bowl game at 5-7. If you beat Texas like that, like if there's anybody that's not, maybe you don't. I don't know if there's like an opportunity for a non-qualifying team, it would be us. We would have enough conference wins. You know, that would probably be a factor. I mean, listen to what we're even talking about. This is brutal.
I don't know if this is the correct take. Maybe this is an emotional hot take, but if I'm the head coach and my program is 5-7, I'm not accepting a bowl invite.
No,
that's fair. That's fair.
I was just comparing it to the Armed Forces Bowl because that would be in TCU Stadium and similar to what Taylor had to do last year.
Do you want to lose to Army to end the season, or do you want to beat Texas to end the season? Like I would probably, sounds kind of like Super Bowl loser mentality, but I would probably rather just beat Texas and go 5-7 than lose to them and go 6-6.
And you go 2-0 against Texas in the final two places and beat them in Lubbock and Austin. I mean, that's just huge.
Yeah.
But, you know, back to TCU, I mean, they're having – we kind of do a woe is me quarterback deal. They're having some issues too.
Yeah.
And other teams have had problems, like, you know, in this conference. But, like, they're having some problems too. And they're not like, feeling great about themselves. Like, we could win this game. We can't have anything crazy happen. Like you're talking about when we talk – you know, when I made a comment that our offense played well against Oregon, it did. It actually, like, that's maybe, like, if you just think about who we played and the situations, and if you're someone who does assign a lot of luck to turnovers, it's like the best we've played, right? But you make that comment, and it's like, yeah, you have like 4 turnovers. Is there, you can't overcome those things, and I just don't. You almost can't. Like being like turnover prone doesn't produce like 6 turnovers. Like you like bad things have to be happening for us to be turning the ball over, and at that rate, unless you have like a true freshman quarterback who can't take an exchange, and I'm kind of rambling, but like we can't have horrific and catastrophic things happen to us from like a luck turnover standpoint on Thursday. If we just have a normal game without our quarterback getting hurt, without anything happening, I'd like to see if we can win. That way we're not like pissed off at Maguire for not winning a game with a true freshman quarterback, in Provo. Like, yeah.
All right, I want to see 2 things. I want to see a youth movement, kind of like Kyle was saying. I like that idea, especially if you're not burning red shirts. Play as many as you can, as much as you can. Let's get some hype for next year. You can beat UCF. You can play with Kansas. You can play with TCU, playing a bunch of young guys. The other thing, I want to see a 2-back set. Whether it's Cameron Valdez and Taj Brooks or Henry freaking Teeter in at fullback, play the man. And
what happened to Teeter, man? Great question.
Let him be an H-back and just go sentence some people. Like, he can do that.
We did it twice against BYU. I don't know if you noticed that. We did it with York once before he got ejected, and then like Teeter once.
Yeah.
And then never went back to it.
But don't put him in H-back. Put him all the way in the backfield and let him run downhill.
Yeah.
Or go pistol and basically run the eye. Like, whatever it is, let him go downhill and make some blocks. I want to see that. Or it's Taj and Valdez, and you just get in the split backs. Because Taj is probably a good lead blocker as anybody. Or Nehemiah Martinez. Put him in there at fullback. Whatever you need to do, I want to see a 2-back set, and I want to use it consistently. You go back to DeAndre Washington, which we'll talk about him in the mailbag, but he had nearly 1,500 yards rushing because you got in the 2-back and messed around a little bit. Right now, you're going Yost level ace formation, and it's just really frustrating. I know you're getting empty sometimes, but.
Speaking of youth movement, Tech Hoops Guy, are you paying attention to what Ben Roberts is doing statistically?
Yeah. No, I'm not. Not like in the context of him. Like, is he about to break records as a freshman? Seems like it.
Yeah. So he's got 66 tackles 2/3 of the way through the season. He didn't play defense against Wyoming. He only played special teams.
Yeah.
So if he stays healthy, as long as Jacob Rodriguez doesn't cut into snaps too much, he'll probably get 100 tackles. which I think going back at least 20 years, probably further, probably never. Like Jordan Brooks had, I think, 85 or 86 as a freshman. He's the last freshman to lead the team in tackles. If he eclipses 90, I think only 16 guys in the last 20 years have had 90 plus tackles, and it's like Cody Davis, Dwayne Slay, Colin Schooler. I mean, really legit defensive players. He's about to do it as a redshirt freshman.
Thought you were a bunch of safeties.
Yeah, that's like I love that it's an inside linebacker now instead of a safety. Yeah. He's like, I looked at some freshman All-American stats, and like depending on how you value, he's there in terms of tackles. But like, if you have 8 sacks versus a guy who has 2 sacks, how many total tackles does that offset? Like, he's pretty light on sacks, but he's got an interception, I think 2 forced fumbles. I think if he gets another turnover or 2 or like forced fumble or 2 and the tackles are there, if he can get another tackle for loss or 2, he should have stats that are like very much on par, if not above average for freshman All-American. And so I know inside linebackers don't get a ton of attention, and like we're all mad at the offense. We're mad at Kitley and Maguire. But there's like this one little silver lining kind of bright spot on the defense. And, if he does finish the season on the same trajectory and develops in the next 2 or 3 years, like he could leave Tech as like an all-timer, at least statistically. I'm not sure how his body and measurables and all that will develop if he's going to be like an NFL type player. But yeah, he's putting together a really special, probably historic season right now at inside linebacker.
It's impressive, especially when, the not a highly recruited or thought of guy too. Either.
No, he had one Power 5 offer.
Yeah, so difficult to make sense of that stuff. Who's going to be a hit, who's not. It's so difficult.
And he was in that Wells Maguire transition class.
And Roberts, he was a Wells guy, right?
Yeah.
So like the Jalen Hutchings, the Ben Roberts, like, do they get offered by this staff now? I don't think so. I mean, unless Roberts was like a track, unless he was really running track, right? Like, I think our linebackers of the future for this program are guys that ran track in high school. Can really run.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they probably don't get recruited.
Hutchings' case, like, I don't know if his arms are like long enough. Do they meet like the threshold for us to offer him now? Same with Bradford, maybe.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the 2 of them only had 3 or 4 combined Power 5 offers.
Yeah,
like they had a couple apiece.
And Hutchings was a running back. Yeah, nobody wanted. And he like tore his leg up. And
he didn't play his senior year. He had like a torn ACL, and he's like 5'10".
Yeah, like we're not offering that guy now. There's no chance of that. Yet he's a guy that, I mean, could we do without him? I don't know. I don't think we could. I mean, he's pretty important.
Yeah, no, he's been absolutely legit for the last like 3 full seasons. So, do you want to do a mailbag with us, Tech Hoops guy?
How long is that going to take?
It's usually not too long, maybe.
You never know.
Minutes or so.
No pressure.
I'm gonna come back real quick. Okay. I gotta y'all keep like a pee jar up here or what? What do y'all? This is ridiculous. It's like Joe Rogan.
All right.
Go to the bathroom.
All right.
Yeah, go for it. Take an intermission.
All right. Yeah, y'all keep going. I'll be back.
It's Matador Transit Mailbag.
You've got mail.
Mail time.
The mail's here. Come on.
I found these in my mailbag.
Well, it's time to reach into the old mailbag here.
Enjoy reading the fan mail. Don't read it all at once.
Any mail for me? You don't have a Tic Tac, do you? Did I get any mail?
No. Why not, honey?
I got some pushback in the mailbag a couple of weeks ago because I don't ask every question. If I feel like we've already talked about the question, I don't ask it again. Just FYI. Or if I feel like, I don't ask every question. So all questions are read. Not all questions are read on air. Just FYI. But I do think this question that we've already talked about is something that I want to ask you, Kyle. Would Tech fans rather Maguire go back to the hopefully we'll make a bowl expectations?
That's a good question. I love the way that's phrased. Definitely kind of a pointed phrasing there. No, I'm all for. I want bigger and better expectations as a program. I think our ceiling is much higher than what maybe past people affiliated with the program thought it should be or could be. What I kind of take issue with is making very specific proclamations very publicly and then not coming close to living up to them.
Right.
So be confident in your team, but maybe don't pinpoint this position group is the best in the country. We would beat this team by 14 points, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to say all that to the media to be confident and to have higher expectations.
Could Brady Boyd be our Ryan Tannehill? No. I mean, maybe. We'll see, I guess. I hope we don't see, but hope Baron Morton is our Ryan Tannehill. What does success look like for the rest of this season? I think we were asked this before. We said 6-6. Is it beating Texas? Is it beating TCU in Texas? That's the success.
Yeah, those two are our Super Bowl. So if we can just win those two,
yeah.
know.
I mean, Kansas is going to be Kansas. I think you'll be competitive with Kansas, and then UCF. I think you certainly could be competitive with them, but it feels like what does success look like in the back half of this season? I mean, 3-4 seems unreasonable. Yeah, 3 out of 4.
Kind of, but like I think you could still probably poke some holes in Kansas. Like, would I be shocked if we go into Lawrence and win? No, I'd be surprised. Like, can you hold serve at home and then knock off Kansas? I think crazier things have happened. I give all of that maybe a 20 to 25% chance of happening. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, how did that happen? Like, that's like a bad 3-point shooter making a 3-pointer. It happens sometimes.
Why have we not fixed the low snaps? I have no idea. That feels like a fix to me, but that's going to be fixed, I think, in the bye week. Where do we rate this as far as disappointing seasons go? Here's another question.
I think Tech Hoops Guy said it's the most disappointing season he's ever sat through as a Tech fan. Is that correct?
I mean, it's certainly in the discussion, right?
Based on expectation, yeah.
I think I remember being really hyped for Mahomes' junior year. Like 2015 with DeAndre Washington and Patrick Mahomes, like you set the world on fire offensively. And I was like, okay, this is the thing we told each other every offseason. We're like, if the defense just gets a little bit better with this offense, like we'll win 9 games. And they were like even worse in 2016. The run game was terrible. Mahomes was still Mahomes, but like he's doing it all by himself. He's like the only good player on that squad.
I think 2014 is very similar to this year if you pair it with the year before. And also if you just kind of contrast, that was Cliff. Like he took a different, like nobody was mad at Cliff for the 2014 team being like thought of as a pretty good going into the year, having just won the Holiday Bowl. And I guess won 7 games, returned a quarterback and a lot of players. And nobody was like mad at Cliff because Cliff didn't talk a lot of shit. But anyways, yeah, 2014 is similar. But yeah, it's way up there. It's also not over with. We'll say that it's not over with. Got a chance. We could pull a rabbit out of last year. What was our record before we won 4 straight games?
4-5.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a full season. Just gotta. Especially, it's so hard. It's so difficult to be rational when you're 3-5 and your last 6 quarters was with a quarterback that just frankly is as bad as it's been for us. Right. I mean, it really, truly, what that really, truly is just not a good situation. Quarterback. And it's just so hard to be reasonable in this moment. Keep reminding myself that.
What does a night of celebration look like in Provo? Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, what was the question?
What does a night of celebration look like in Provo? You didn't
Yeah, this
celebrate.
is funny. So on Friday, when I got there, I was getting a tour of some of their media facilities and football facilities and everything. By the way, if you're a big like Mike Leach fan and Air Raid fan, and you don't know your BYU history, you should brush up because like what they did in the 80s and 90s is like what we did with Leach in the 2000s, but on another level. Like Ty Detmer won a Heisman. They won a national championship in 1984. They had Steve Young, Jim McMahon. Like if you like quarterbacks and you like passing yards and all that, BYU history is for you. So that saw all those shrines and everything. But as I was being guided on this tour, our main host was like, hey, BYU is a dry campus, which I figured. He was like, so our big vice around here is ice cream. So when the tour's over, we'll go get ice cream. I was like, oh, that's lovely. Like I know y'all pass out ice cream at the games. We're gonna go to an ice cream shop. So we do that. Saturday they bring us ice cream at the game. And then like the fourth quarter, there's this one really annoying BYU fan sitting behind us because he was like so paranoid that they were gonna blow it the whole game. And I'm sitting there like, dude, we are dreadful. Like, y'all don't have to score again. You can take 3 knees and punt it to us and win the game. And he was like, if we win, I'm going to get my celebration ice cream. And if we lose, I'm going to get my depression ice cream. But I'm getting my ice cream either way. So all that to say, these people are obsessed with ice cream. Like it is, everybody else in the world says win or lose, we still booze. These people, they eat ice cream on Friday before the game. They eat ice cream at the game. And win or lose after the game, they eat ice cream. It's what they're all about. So that is what I imagine the nightlife looking like in Provo. It's just ice cream.
Just ice cream socials, baby.
Yes.
Could Kitley solve 2 problems by putting Jake under center?
So it's funny. It's funny you say that because on our first drive on the botched 4th and 1, I turned to the guy next to me and I was like, I don't know if we can put him under center. Like I would just run a quarterback sneak here. I was like, we might fumble that snap. And of course we fumbled the snap or the exchange anyway. But no, you might actually be creating more problems. Like I think in high school, he took every snap out of the shotgun. In practice, he takes every snap out of the shotgun. He's probably taken like maybe 50 snaps practice or game in his life under center versus 10,000 from the shotgun. So no, I don't think so.
Why do we do this to ourselves every year?
Tech Hoops guy, you can take this one if you want.
Why do we do this to ourselves every year?
Yeah, why do we put ourselves through this every year?
Yeah, it's it's a valid question. That's a deep question. Are you talking about like just being a fan, like a true diehard, where you invest a lot of time and that time converts into like emotional investment, and then which also has a relationship to like financial investment going to these games. So why do you do it? Like to me, honestly, it's like it's the same like reason why people go down into like being like really problem gambling. It's the exact same thing. Like what y'all are doing is, you buy in, you're all in, right? Every Saturday, you push everything out into the middle of the table when Tech's playing, and like you can't help it, right? You're that. It's just there's a select few of us just got like hit with this, where that this is what happens to us, right? Or it happens to me, and I think it happens to y'all and a lot of other people, and it sucks, right? It sucks going bust as often as we have been. So it's like, yeah, why do you do it to you? It's a valid question. Why do you keep doing this to yourself?
I remember after the COVID season when Matt Wells was not fired after year 2, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to like disengage from this. It takes up too much of my time, like when I'm writing before the game or whatever, it occupies too much headspace for me. And I was like really going to make an effort. I was like, I'm not going to watch some games if they don't seem compelling. I'm not going to care what the final score is. And like, sure enough, I bought a plane ticket to Houston for the season opener in 2021. And like, for no reason, like they did nothing to pull me back in, but I literally could not stay away if I tried. And then of course if you remember that game, Houston scores, surprise onside, they score again, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Why on earth did I fly to Houston?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, I knew better, and I'm still here, and thankfully we won that game. But no, if I tried, I could not disengage from it.
How many years away are we from Lincoln Riley returning to his roots and becoming head coach for Texas Tech? By the way, thoughts and prayers to Lincoln Riley, who's missing time at practice. Cliff Kingsbury trying to be an on-field coach this week. Did y'all catch that story?
No.
Lincoln Riley's sick, so USC's trying to put a waiver in to have Cliff coach on the field so he can coach the quarterbacks while Lincoln's gone.
Interesting.
I think we're many years away. I'll say that.
You know how Cliff gets this reputation as like, offensive wizard and quarterback whisperer guru? He also has a knack for like being followed by quarterbacks with like interesting personalities and demeanor, like Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray. Like part of what you want in the quarterback is like the all-American, like leadership, face of the franchise type stuff. And like those guys are not that.
No.
So I wonder like if that's just a crazy coincidence or if maybe Cliff's style maybe perpetuates a little bit of that.
Maybe.
I mean, no, I don't think many people would have tolerated Manziel, right?
I was going to say, we all saw the Manziel documentary.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I don't know if I can read this one. I'm going to. Who's more believable, Joseph Smith or Zach Kitley calling for near 40 fast plays for a third-string true freshman quarterback on the road?
I will say this. I'm not going to touch the Joseph Smith thing, but I tried to give Kitley his flowers earlier by saying we basically ran it like I think as much as we reasonably could have. But I kind of take that back because we were still going up tempo. And I don't think the strategy with Jake Strong should be let's run as many offensive plays as possible. Like when you're Lincoln Riley at OU and you have Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts, like, yeah, that should 100% be the strategy. But like, let's slow the game down. Like if we can get out of here running 50, 55 plays, let's do that instead of trying to run 75 for like no apparent reason and having no success with it. So yeah.
On that, I agree with you on that. Do you also think, or do you think there's a way that can tempo also make you things more simple? Do you believe that can be the case? Like if you're running the ball, going as fast as you possibly can, so that the defense has to just line up into a base defense and like boom, snap. Like if you believe that can simplify things for your quarterback, I think there is some merit to doing some of that. I think if you're worried about your quarterback making decisions or being a true freshman and processing things, I agree with what you're saying. That I think one way would be to slow things down totally, have him run over like the way Cumbie did with Donovan. But I also think a reasonable mind could be like, we don't do that. What we do is this other thing, and we can actually make it simple by going really fast too.
I see what you're saying. But I also think, like, zooming out, I'm confident going into that game that, like, we can hold BYU to 20 points or fewer on the defensive side. And so I'm approaching the entire 60 minutes on offense from the vantage point of we don't have to maximize anything. We just have to do enough to win the game. Like, we don't need 500 yards. We don't need 50 points. We don't need to go as fast as we can. We need to score 20 points to have, like, a very real shot of winning this game. And that's exactly what you surrendered on defense was 20 points. And so I didn't feel like we were operating in a way of like, hey, let's be as smart and strategic as possible in getting to 21, 23, 24 points. It was just like falling into our same old, we go tempo because that's our only identity. It doesn't really work out. Like it's hard to kind of justify in the big picture. And so that part is frustrating to me is like, I think we should have just taken a totally different strategy and approach on offense.
What we did definitely did not work. That's the only thing we know. We don't know for sure that if our motive was to simple, because I truly think like everything we did on Saturday was geared towards simplifying things for Strong. I mean, if not, then like Like, it's just crazy to think that we weren't hyper aware of that, and like our entire focus was to actually try to make things easy on him. And I actually believe that tempo was a part of that. I actually think that that was a part of what we were that was intended to make things simple for him. I also know it didn't work. Like, it didn't work. So
I'll give you a counter example from my time as a suffering Vikings fan. For a while there, our franchise quarterback was a young man named Tavares Jackson. And if you don't know that name or remember him, I couldn't blame you. RIP, by the way, gone too soon. But like,
I think he went to a SWAC. He went to a SWAC school, didn't he?
Yeah, Alabama A&M, I believe. But he was our starting quarterback at a time when Adrian Peterson was our starting running back. And like, Adrian Peterson in those days putting up literal MVP numbers, record-breaking numbers, 2,000 yards. And like, in games where Tavares Jackson threw the ball like 24 times or fewer, we were like 6-1. And then when he threw it 30 plus, we're like 0-5. And so I would approach it that way. I'd be like, hey, if I'm Kitley, I sit Jake Strong down. I go, we need you to throw the ball 25 times today. That's it. And like 10 of those are going to be really easy, right to the flats, like no reads. We might only need like 5 true drop back, throw it down the field, need you to read the defense type throws. Like, we're going to put you in big situations or in good situations. And then the other 2/3 of the offense is going to be handing it to Taj Brooks, Cameron Valdez. Maybe we work in a jet sweep to Dre McCray, Xavier White. But like, I'm telling them, I was like, we need you to play a clean game for 25 dropbacks. No sacks, no interceptions, no fumbles. Can you do that? And like, script 15 of those 25 dropbacks in advance and like work those into the grounder and practice all week. That's how I would approach it. But instead we went tempo. So we like max out Taj. He gets 30 carries and we still have to throw it 40 times because like, we can't run Taj 50 times in a game. So I would have approached it totally differently. Like, I see what you're saying. The tempo can simplify it, and you're more likely to get a base look, a vanilla look from the defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the trade-off is worth it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I think it's possibly right. Yeah, and you actually make a point I hadn't quite thought of, because I think our tempo is honestly designed to get Taj more involved too. I think there's some motivation to that. I think if you sit there and you're really deliberate, and you run him over and he runs back over, and we sit there, like, I think it can weaken your run game, especially if like you're playing a true freshman quarterback and they know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So we're probably like, we got to get Taj going. So let's do our tempo stuff, and we know it works. We've seen it work. Taj leads the country in rushing, and it'll keep things simple for him. But also, on the other hand, what you said made me think of, there's less plays if you can truly slow it down. Taj is, him having 20 touches might be better than 25 if there's fewer possessions, fewer plays. Like, he would have a greater impact on the game, because if you throw it 50 times and run him 30 times, like, yeah, you handed him the ball 30 times, but if you threw it 25 times and gave it to him 20 times, he might have been able to have a bigger impact. So.
That is exactly the point I made in response to Kitley 2 weeks ago after the Kansas State loss. In his press conference, he was like, no, we run the ball plenty. In fact, Taj is 6th in the nation in carries. And like, the average fan hears that and they go, oh, like, yeah, we must be running it a lot more than I realize. But we're 98th nationally, or we were before the BYU game, in the share of our offensive plays that are runs. And so, like, same deal. We might be close to maxing out what Taj can do on a game-by-game basis, and we're still putting the ball in the hands of our true freshman quarterback 40-plus times. Whereas if we would just slow down, we could max out Taj at 30 carries, and like, he's 60% of the offense that game, rather than maxing him out at 30 and he's 40% of the offense. Like, yeah, you want him to be the largest total share of the offense as possible.
Yeah.
And we're not really doing a good job of that.
We also have other running backs, just FYI.
Yeah.
You could also run those guys. Are the Gauchos bad luck? TCU last year, Wyoming, BYU, all losses of varying degrees and of embarrassment.
Yeah, 2 thoughts on this.
U of H. You were at that U of H game we won.
Yeah, I went to Waco too. But so it's funny because the guy who asked that is sitting next to me at all 3 of those games that we lost. So he's trying to pass off blame. But 2, maybe I'm cursed individually, but like I said, Rob was ultimately unable to make the trip to Provo. And so it wasn't a Gauchos deal. It might have been a Kyle deal, but Rob's not cursed, as far as we know.
Ain't no curses. I think I might be a little cursed, but
maybe a little.
in other ways.
Hey, we're Rangers fans, so
It's true. World Series.
undefeated in league championship series.
Why do programs with similar budgets and talent like Oklahoma State and Kansas State consistently compete in conferences while we are at a 15-year of bad football? What is the root cause of our relative underachievement?
I mean, I've got some thoughts on some of those things.
Yeah.
Wait, I think quarterback play is a big part of it.
Coaching.
And when you look at the amount of time that we had, like walk-ons and former walk-ons, like because you're talking about that question is over a long time period, right? Because Oklahoma State has been good for about 15 years. Same with Kansas State too. But so I'm talking about like McLean Carter, Jet Duffy, Henry Colombi, and now we're into like Jake Strong. We have had way more than the other Big 12 teams. We're playing a quarterback that would not play for any other Big 12 team in that moment, in that moment in time. And you can cherry pick like examples of where other teams have had to deal with those situations too, but that's true. But if you also look, when they lost a lot of games.
Can I push back on that though?
Yeah.
I don't dispute for a minute that we've probably played more quarterbacks than anybody due to injury. We also had like 2.5 seasons with the literal greatest quarterback to ever walk the face of the earth, and we still lost.
One of those seasons. One of them was a really good Tech season,
I mean, he went like 1-2, 1-3 as a freshman, 7-6 as a sophomore, 5-7 as he was 500 at best.
8-5 as a sophomore, by the way.
Okay, if we count the LSU forfeit in the Texas Bowl, but like if you don't, and then like you take out the FCS games,
that should be counted as a forfeit. Like the talent discrepancy there.
But then, like, if you also take out Group of 5, like, okay, yeah, Pat beat UTEP and, like, Stephen F. Austin, and, like, Kansas was Kansas back then. Like, you take that out, I was like, we lost with the best player to ever play the game. And so, like, even when we had a full 2-year sample size with no quarterback injuries and, like, as good as you can get at the quarterback position, we still were not very good.
Would you argue that Gundy is the best coach Oklahoma State's ever had?
Oh, absolutely.
And then would you argue that Bill Snyder's the best coach that Kansas State's ever had?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those two programs have had the best coaches they've ever had for 20 years, and you've not had that.
I'd also argue that over the time period that the question was asked, we are not similarly situated with Oklahoma State in terms of resources. I think we are now and going forward, like we've caught up and we'll get there, but like they spent they were way ahead of us from like probably mid 2000s for like a decade there. That makes up a part of this question, where they were getting guys that we were trying to land from Texas, and for whatever reason, but one of those reasons might have been their facilities were way better than ours.
Shout out T-Boone.
But yeah, no, that's it. That part, that is what hurts the most, I guess, out of the decade of suck. Is it's not that you like aren't beating teams like Texas and OU and A&M maybe, or teams that you quote unquote probably shouldn't be, but losing to teams that like on paper, like how many times have we lost at Kansas State in a row? I mean, that it's an amount that like is just, it's staggering. It's a staggering situation.
There's some painful questions in here I'm going to run through real quick. Are we closer to a G5 program or a Power 5 program? I would say Power 5. Y'all are hesitating there.
I mean, we're in a Power 4 conference.
Yeah.
So,
how much time should be given to this staff to right the ship? Unlimited time.
If we have top 30 recruiting classes, like if you have the best players in the new Big 12, I think you just change out coordinators and position coaches till it works. I mean, I think within reason.
Yeah, and everything's always like, who would you get too, right?
Yeah.
Without a clear cut answer, like,
like Lincoln Riley.
You just can't. It kind of goes back to what I said. Like you can't fire a coach at 5-3 and not without and then hand the keys to a guy like Maguire who literally had never been a head coach. He's this Texas high school guy. You can't do that and not give him the longest leash you've ever given a coach, right? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, unless he gets caught with a bunch of little kids, right, or something. There's just nothing that could possibly stop him from getting the longest leash you could imagine. So that question,
I'm still all in with Maguire. I've seen people, and maybe this is just immediate post game hot takes, but people calling him a fraud or a used car salesman. I know he knows how to coach, and this is a different level, but he has led football teams, football programs to repeated, continued success. We know he can recruit. We know he's a relationships guy. And so it's does this season suck? Yeah, absolutely. But have I lost faith in his ability to be the CEO and lead us to much better seasons in the future? Absolutely not.
Yeah. He's also been a part of some big bounce backs at Baylor. I think he won 2 different seasons where they were just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Worse than we are now by multipliers.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some Hamby discourse that I think we can run through next week. Is this season more disappointing than last year's basketball season? No, I think last year's basketball season is more disappointing because of how
that was just bizarre.
How it flamed out and coaching change at the end.
That was just bizarre too.
Yeah,
bizarre.
I don't know if I would classify last basketball season as disappointing. I think it was really frustrating and almost maddening just how poorly led that team and program was. But my expectations for them were not to me, if you're talking about playing in Arlington and football, that's about the equivalent of a Elite Eight in basketball. Is that about right? Sweet 16. And I didn't have those kinds of expectations. I thought we were a bubble team, and kind of were. Honestly, with our last 3 or 4 conference games, we still had a shot at making the tournament. Didn't pan out, but no, I would say football was much more disappointing.
Yeah, and we knew a lot of the coaching stuff before the season started, so it was inevitable. How high can Taj Brooks get on the single season top 10 for Texas Tech rushers? 10 is 1,100 with DeAndre Washington. He's on pace for 9th, right behind James Hadnot at 1,369.
Considering 6 carries against Oregon and a rough start against Wyoming and not playing in the second half against Tarleton, he's averaging more than 100 yards per game, even with all that considered. I don't think it's outlandish that in the last 4 he could get close to 550, maybe even 600 if he really goes off. And so I think his ceiling is basically tying DeAndre Washington. And he'll easily eclipse 1,000 yards. He might do that in the next game. So yeah, floor maybe 1,200 yards. Yeah. Ceiling 1,500 yards.
1,509 would be James Gray at 4th.
And that'd be based on the offense we run versus what they were running in the 90s. When they did that, that'd be really impressive.
That would be very impressive.
It's hard for me to rationalize everyone on one hand being so mad about our misuse of Taj Brooks, and then on the other hand, him being one of the most efficient and most productive, running backs we've had. Those things cannot. It's very difficult to wrap my head around both of those concepts.
But his PFF grade isn't good.
I think it's context. It's you lose, but you lose to Oregon by 1 possession, a game that you could have, maybe should have won, and he has 6 carries. You lose to West Virginia in a winnable game because he has 3 carries in the first half. It's if we just use him consistently, I think that kind of like in the BYU game, what I'm saying, it's hard to go to him more than you did. But you can't look at the Oregon game, the Wyoming game, the West Virginia game and say that honestly that we did all we could to get Taj the ball there. So yeah, he still has monster numbers despite that, but within those individual games, I think it's really hard to look at that and say, yeah, we used him as efficiently as we possibly could have, or we maximized what Tosh Brooks could have given the team that day.
All right, I'm skipping is a hot dog a taco and getting to the final question in the mailbag. Is the Adidas news the most exciting news for Texas Tech football since the Joey Maguire hiring? Plus assorted Adidas thoughts.
I think Micah Hudson is probably bigger. But I do think a lot of people are missing the boat on the Adidas Patrick Mahomes significance. Like, I see people whose immediate reaction is like, oh, well, Adidas just did UTEP's uniforms and those don't look good. So, like, why are we so excited about this? It's like, you're not excited about it because you're going to wear the same uniform template as UTEP. You're excited about it because, like, imagine your UNC in, like, 1993 as the Air Jordan logo is, like, just dropping. And Michael Jordan still has, like, 5 years left in his prime. Or I should back up further, like, 1990. Like, let's say he still has a decade left in his prime or something. And you move from Reebok as UNC hoops to this new Air Jordan brand. Like, you're going to be pretty excited about that. Or imagine if, like, Tom Brady, if Michigan went TB12 back in 2011 when Tom Brady, like, still had 3 more Super Bowls left to go. That'd be a big deal. Or if Stanford signed some exclusive deal to wear Tiger Woods logoed apparel for their golf team. Like, it's golf, so not as big of a deal. But, like, that's basically what you're doing. Or Michael Phelps in swimming. You are aligning yourself with the best player in the world in his sport. And he's going to be there. He's going to be on that perch for the next, like, 10 years. That's the excitement. It's not that, like, the stripes on the uniforms might change. And so I think people are kind of missing the value of that. And, like, one last point along that same line is people like, well, like, we didn't really win with him here, so why are we – like, yeah, that's true. And I just made that point to Tech Hoops Guy. But, like, if you have Tiger Woods, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan as an alumnus of your university and you're not capitalizing on that, you're making a mistake. Like, I legitimately don't know. Did Michigan win anything when Tom Brady was there?
No, nothing big, I don't think.
Like, I know they didn't win a national title. Like, I don't know if they won a Rose Bowl either. Or
he was picked in the 6th round, so it wasn't like he had a bunch of success at Michigan.
Yeah, like Michael Jordan obviously won a natty at UNC hoops, but, like, let's say that, I don't know, like, let's say LeBron went to Ohio State as, like, a one and done, like, if he had to, and they pulled a Ben Simmons and, like, you know, made the tournament and lost in the first round. Would Ohio State turn down an affiliation with LeBron James? Of course not. So why on earth would we be like, well, you know, Under Armour has better stripes and UTEP's uniforms look dumb, so why would we associate with Patrick Mahomes? It's like the dumbest – it'd be the biggest missed opportunity that you can, like, imagine. So I don't think Under Armour's uniforms look that good. I don't like our current uniforms. I think we should level the bevel. I think if you rein in Adidas and tell them we don't want stupid-looking uniforms that can give you a classic look, like the Dallas Cowboys don't need new uniforms every year because they look just fine. So get a look like that with your own colors and call it good and be the only school exclusively associated with Patrick Mahomes and, like, lean into that. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I hope you pick a uniform and stick with it for the next 20 years. But otherwise, there's also fans that are getting tired of tired of Patrick Mahomes. Just, oh, it's too much. It's too much hype. Like, no.
Seriously?
He's the greatest NFL player of all time, and he went to Texas Tech. We're going to talk about it.
It's like the North Pole getting sick of hearing about Santa Claus. We have Patrick effing Mahomes, who, like, wants to wear the double T everywhere. He's in the Ring of Honor. Like, he loves this school. Like, some guys, I mean, like, I think Crabtree was kind of this way. He graduated, and then it was like, peace out. Like, we never heard from Crabtree again until he came back for the Ring of Honor. And you have a guy who's, like, not only willing, but, like, he wants to elevate Texas Tech with money, with brand recognition, with publicity. Why on earth would you be like, well, you know, hey, we don't want to over affiliate with you, Patrick? Like, what?
He also just signed a $500 million deal, and you're allowing him to put his name on your uniform. Fine. Like, you think Oklahoma State going further would turn down T-Boo Pickens' money because they were tired of
it's another example. Like the North Carolina was good, but it'd be like Oregon being like, we're a little too associated with Phil Knight.
Yeah.
Just the links. Us. I mean, we're almost synonymous with Nike. It makes me uncomfortable. No, you're right. I mean, there's only advantages. I think, to me, on the uniform, if the provider is really like paying attention to you, it doesn't matter who it is, you're probably gonna have good stuff. And I think we'll get paid attention to more now than we would have. Just being stock Under Armour seems like now we'll be we'll obviously be the focus of the brand. I mean, there will be no other Mahomes brand teams, will there? I mean, maybe like Kansas eventually, unfortunately.
At least not starting off. But that was what we heard, was like, so Arizona State is currently an Adidas school, and they approached Mahomes, and Mahomes told them, no, Texas Tech has to be first. And so I think kind of like UNC with like Michigan and OU now going the Jordan brand, it might branch out eventually, but Mahomes was like very deliberate. Tech has to be first. So I think we'll be first and exclusive for a while. And then Kansas would probably make some sense, being in Chiefs territory and everything, at least for football. We'll probably keep Adidas for basketball. But like Arizona State, they want a piece of the Mahomes action. So it'll probably spread to other schools. And I'm okay with that as long as we're first and like we get the most attention and, benefit from it, obviously, which I think we will.
All right, that's all I got.
Tech Hoops guy, did we keep you too long?
No, that's all right. Yeah, it is long. Like, this is crazy long.
Yeah.
I mean, do y'all watch y'all statistics? Do people stay on this whole time?
We could probably look it up on YouTube, but
No, you don't even know.
We're
No idea.
we're at the height of viewership right now.
What do you mean?
What we were about a certain number of listeners for about the first hour, and then it jumps about an hour and a half in. So I don't know if people are just finding it late or if they're sticking with it. They have a lot of the rewatches next day, anyways. A lot of the viewership is next day or on the podcast.
How does it feel to be a friend of the show officially?
It's good, man. I definitely don't want to be an enemy of the show. Just social or online, kind of the warriors. Y'all have got an army behind you. It seems like.
I think you're in rare company. So BJ Simmons is a friend of the show. Tech Hoops guy. Who else has been on 3 times?
John Kurtz. Has he been on 3 times or just twice?
Wow, that's a pretty good list there.
I think just twice. It might just be you and BJ.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's yeah. No, there's nothing else that me and him are can be mentioned. It's the only time, I think.
He's a pretty sharp bettor from what I can tell. So y'all might have that in common.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I'm missing somebody. I'm gonna feel bad if I think of it later, but yeah, it might just be that might be a short list.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be back anytime y'all want me. Just let me know.
The people love you. We I think either the first time or second time you came on, we got like specific comments. They were like, "Yeah, Tech Hoops guy is awesome." Nice. I guess you don't do your own podcast very often. The From Here It's Potable.
Yeah, no, it's kind of I'm sure we'll get back together on it, but nobody listens to that one. So
I don't think that's true because like millions of people on RS comment on how they are missing out on it. So I feel like y'all do have listeners whenever you publish one.
Well, anyways, yeah, I'll be there next Thursday. Hope we get a win.
I'll be there too. Let's try and grab a beer or something if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool.
Or ice cream if you're more like the BYU folks. We can do that too.
All right, final thoughts, Kyle.
It is better to be a free man in a small house than a slave in a big one.
It's better to be a free man in a small house than a slave in a big one. All right, I love it.
All right, that's all I got.
Coaches get fired for comments like that nowadays.
You're not wrong. Yeah, maybe I should have proofread that before just firing it out there. But I can't get fired from this podcast. I'm a part owner. So
All right.
love y'all.